AI is enhancing the analysis of genomic data, proteomic data, imaging data, leading to faster discoveries in disease mechanisms and treatment.
Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, saying that the next amazing revolution, and the biggest one ever, is going to be digital biology.
And Andy, you mentioned CRISPR and things like that. But collectively, these technologies, the main thing that it allows us to do is it saves a lot of time.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Tuesday, June 18th, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. With me on today's show is Jyunmi, Andy, and I am Beth, your host today. Brian is traveling. Today we are talking about the intersection of AI and biology, digital biology, if you would, and how it's transforming the biotech landscape. There have been really exciting announcements all through this year, and really there have been exciting announcements before, but they're really starting to develop some trajectory. AI is enhancing the analysis of genomic data, proteomic data, imaging data, leading to faster discoveries in disease mechanisms and treatments. We have things like AlphaFold 3 from Google DeepMind. We have Jensen Huang talking about AI and digital biology. And just yesterday, OpenAI published some information about a copilot that they've been running since 2023 with Color Health for personalized cancer screening and treatment. So given that as the runner-up, Andy, do you want to give us a little bit of orientation here?
Yeah. So in part, this show at this time was inspired by one of the thought leaders in the world of AI, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, saying that the next amazing revolution, and the biggest one ever, is going to be digital biology. And he said he's proud to say that NVIDIA is deeply entrenched in digital biology and moving forward in ways unseen yet. But a lot of their research and development is surrounding the application of AI tools, not only the hardware, but the software that NVIDIA built to this whole arena called digital biology. So let me give you a kind of a primer on what digital biology represents. Some of these things may be familiar to you because for some time now, we've been unlocking new insights from mountains of biological data. And high-level computing is required to do that because of the vastness of the data that has to be collected and understood, both on the microcosmic level within a biological system like your body, but also in population level biology and ecology and so on. So you might have also heard about our growing ability to actually manipulate biology, I'll call this biochemically, using tools like the DNA editing capabilities of CRISPR. And there's a new level of CRISPR accuracy and precision that's made available by CRISPR Cas12a, which is the latest version. Cas9 is the one that you might have heard of before. But now this one allows much more precise insertions and corrections of DNA in the cell. Now, the way that happens in the human body, like they can actually edit a person's DNA, is they have to then take a progenitor cell, like a stem cell, and change it, so correct its DNA, and then it basically, replace some bone marrow with this new edited progenitor cell so that within the bone marrow, new cells will be generated. I'm thinking about sickle cell anemia correction, which is an in-practice use of this kind of technique. And then that allows your body to then create this new corrected DNA cell and propagate throughout the body. But it's your own body building a new edited form of the DNA. And okay, then there's this area called proteomics, Beth mentioned. that's about predicting protein structures, and that's what AlphaFold 3 is doing. Proteins are the basic building blocks of life. So understanding what alternative proteins are that don't actually exist through the process of evolution, and understanding where there may be some opportunities to create proteins that are useful to us, that's an area that's being advanced by AI dramatically. And I think far more interesting is this whole area of what I'll call biocomputing. And what that includes is developing large language models for biology. So understanding a language of cells to understand diseases and health in a more profound way. And also modeling and simulation. So using powerful AI to understand life functions and diseases and aging by the process of creating virtual representations of living organisms and simulations of other organisms and their interactions. We can understand the mechanics much better. But then we get a little more science fiction in biocomputing when using DNA logic gates and storage. Remember, DNA stores more information than the Library of Congress, right? That kind of idea. Use those things together to enable more efficient computing system. And that gets us to the final startup, a Swiss biocomputing startup called FinalSpark, which launched Neuro Platform, the world's first online system that allows scientists to use living brain cells as the compute for their experiments, like in calculations. So it uses 16 tiny clumps of human brain cells that they call organoids. Now, they didn't extract these from humans. They grew them separately in a lab. And those become little bioprocessors. So Neuro Platform combines a computer part, like a chipboard, a motherboard, and these organoids, which are living brain cells. And they train the computer by dosing the organoids with dopamine when they get the answer right. Okay, so it's like a little AI of its own. And FinalSpark claims that these bioprocessors consume 1 million times less power than silicon digital processors. So this is relevant to, and digital biology may be the solution ultimately to the chip shortage, and also to the efficiency problems of silicon computing, because our brains have evolved to be very efficient compute processors and taking very, very little power. I just had a piece of toast today. Okay, another area is synthetic biology, and that's about developing synthetic cells that can interface with living cells in a controlled way so that you could actually create like new sensors in your body that have been developed with synthetic cells, but then are implanted or attached or appended to your sensors to enhance your ability to sense things in the environment around you. So synthetic biology is a whole area.
And that's called something. Jyunmi, what is that called? That's not prosthetics, that's cybernetics. Is that what that is?
Yes. So cybernetics to replace the function equal to or beyond your natural capabilities. That'd be cybernetics to involve a compute process as part of that. Otherwise, it would be under the umbrella of just prosthesis.
Right. And this is an accidental or unintentional crossover with the new new sci-fi AI show that has not yet been released, but we will let you know when it is, because that's something we're talking about there. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay, so just one last thing, which is the latest and greatest news in the development of digital biology, is at MIT, announced literally the day before yesterday, a team there managed to create a mapping of all the 100 billion neurons and 200 billion cells in 2 different hemispheres of brains that had been used for this process. Now, previously, you could use MRI to kind of get a really fuzzy picture of what's going on in the brain, but this actually maps all the interconnections of it And they developed new technologies to achieve this. One is a method of slicing intact human brain hemispheres without damaging the tissue. So previously, it took months to slice a hemisphere of a brain in really gross, mechanism. But this is very thinly sliced, and so no anatomical information is lost in the process, all the way down to the cellular level. So that's an increase in the resolution of our ability to see what the brain as a computer is really doing. And by the way, it changes all the time. So doing a static mapping of it isn't particularly useful, except that the technologies that are developing around this at MIT are making it possible then to ultimately understand what's actually happening in the live in vivo brain. Once they get those slices, then an expert chemist on the team developed a technology that transforms that slice into a clear, flexible, durable, and quickly and evenly and repeatedly labelable slice. And that's what allowed them to then put this all into a simulation, a model, in a computer that shows an actual interconnected neuronal network. Okay, so we're talking about deep neural networks in AI. Well, now we're getting visibility into the most advanced neural network that we know of in the world and in the universe, and that is the human brain.
Right. Wow. We're going to need a bigger show.
Definitely, yeah.
So there were a ton of things that stood out for me. I will completely confess that when we talk about the organoids and the chips attached to them, I start to get heebie-jeebies and shiver. But it's a super important point that as we're moving in the direction of AI getting smarter and smarter and being more capable, we are running up against an energy wall that apparently is not there's a door in it if you're willing to go in a different direction other than just capturing and trying to build more efficient energy capture, energy creation.
Or as Sam Altman says, we've got to develop fusion power systems in order to just power the AI of the future. Well, maybe not. Maybe there are much more efficient ways.
Well, go do your fusion thing, right? But also maybe look at what is already working. But I just see way too many science fiction movie things of it's the Cylons. It's like that Cylon tub with the things. That's really what it is for me. Battlestar Galactica. Sorry. Okay. So
one of the things we didn't mention, by the way, at this intersection between computing and biology is that we're talking about these things potentially merging on the neural platform side. The cells, the biological cells, becoming the computer, imitating the brain or being the brain for the computer. On the other side, we have this mechanical insertion of compute resources to a living brain, and that's Neuralink. That's the Elon Musk technology that is still early in its stages, and it has difficulties, of course, because the interface between an electronic component and your living cells is a tricky one, and you have an immune system that's probably going wild trying to get rid of whatever that thing was that was inserted.
Right. Absolutely. And I know that the first recipient is still alive and doing interviews and engaging. And I believe that they were looking for the second. I haven't seen news if that was selected and if that implantation has happened yet, but I assume that's happening sometime relatively soon. I also think that the first recipient, they told us long after it had been planted, there was success on that side before they announced it. Jyunmi.
By the way, there's also this other trend that we discuss on the show, which is the shrinking of the processors and the models down to the point where you can have a local large language model, at least, plenty of the world's knowledge, exhaustive collection of the knowledge, and have that on something as small as a smartphone, and eventually on a chip, and eventually something that you attach to your brain that provides this external memory and processing resource. So that's for the sci-fi show for the moment, but Neuralink is the first step toward that.
Yes.
It's not just going to be a connection to an outboard computer. Eventually, you'll be able to have, just like they have pacemakers today that go into your heart, or actually sit underneath the skin, on your chest, and provide electrical continuity and regularity to your heart. Well, there'll be an external, just underneath the skin, probably, chip that can be replaced with a brand new one that, has much more processing power and so on as these things get more and more sophisticated. And you'll be able to know everything about the world, not by talking to Siri, but instead by knowing it. It just is being inserted into your knowledge because it's an extension of your brain.
Right. Or looking at your smart glasses. I'm thinking cochlear implant when you're talking about that, because that is something that people can detach and reattach to their heads.
Yeah.
Jyunmi.
So I wanted to recenter on AlphaFold 3 in particular, because when they announced it at Google I/O, it was, they just almost did a stealth announcement. They just said, oh yeah, we came out with AlphaFold 3 and scientists love it, right? But, in researching it for today's show, some of the things that we get from it today and other models and bio or digital biology technology is pretty amazing. Yeah. So the main areas that these models help in is a lot of the both identifying and developing treatments for diseases, and like Andy said, talk about diving into the genetics and things like that. And if everyone remembers, some of the milestones in the development of digital biology was the Human Genome Project, right? And that happened a couple decades ago at this point.
Yeah, but the University of California, Santa Cruz.
There you go. And so that was a huge milestone in getting us to a point where we can start really looking deep into it. And Andy, you mentioned CRISPR and things like that. But collectively, these technologies, the main thing that it allows us to do is it saves a lot of time. So if people don't realize that science, as much as we love science fiction and when we talk about it, hard science is boring. It's tedious because it's a lot of, all right, let me develop my hypothesis. Now let's develop a testing structure. Now let's identify this, XYZ, and then you do a test. Is it good? No. Do the next test. And this is thousands upon thousands of tests to realize or to get some sort of meaningful data.
Right.
What these models provide is a way to shortcut that. And I shouldn't say shortcut that. I should say accelerate. Right, because it's still going through the scientific method and going through the scientific process, but because of how powerful these models are, how much data they have, and how much training they have, they can help predict and point scientists in the right direction. Right. So, say you were looking for a single grain of sand on a beach, but you didn't know which beach to search for, right? First. So that's what these models kind of do, is they help you narrow down where you want to look, and then they help you do all the thousands upon thousands of tests almost instantaneously. One of the pieces of data that came out was for certain kinds of tests, these models, in particular AlphaFold 3, can shorten the assessment process of a potential test from what could take months or years to process down to seconds.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine 6 seconds to do a test that would take you months or years to do. That's an amazing amount of time that you have saved, which you can then apply to further down the development. And so one of the things in particular that point out is accelerating drug discovery and development, right? Mm-hmm. So finding chemical combinations, drugs that they put together that can treat diseases. Now,
and MRSA, right? You're about to say this? MRSA was Staphylococcus aureus, which is antibiotic resistant Staphylococcus aureus. And this is an AlphaFold 3 story, right? They pointed to the development of new antibiotics that would be effective against
Exactly.
them, which is super exciting.
Yeah. So I think that's the meat of what digital biology is, right? It's the combination of biology sciences and computing sciences with data analytics and modeling, so that it gives us a way to create simulated data, a way to give us these simulations that we can build and do all of this rapid testing, and just help us reach points where we can solve very large issues. This is the kind of thing that's going to help us solve things like Alzheimer's and solve diseases like cancer. These major diseases that have afflicted humanity, and I think that's what I like most about when we talk about the news, AI news, and things like that. I tend to focus on the AI and science, because this is the benefit. When people ask, "Oh, what good is AI?" I mean, besides just the business aspects and making our lives easier, and all the low hanging fruit and those kinds of things, this is what we can use it for. We can solve disease, and we can solve hunger through development in agriculture. Just massive human global size problems, and that's what I'm really excited about for AI.
Right, because biology doesn't necessarily mean human biology. Biology is the study of life, right? Like ology is study of bio is life. So like sustainable, if we look forward in needing to develop more sustainable, insert in the blank, energy sources, food, transportation, right? Like all sorts of things that can be influenced by these new this intersection of AI and biology. One of the things that for me stood out about AlphaFold 3 is that the previous AlphaFolds were creating a 3D replica of structure, right? So it was modeling the actual structure of the thing. AlphaFold 3 brings in the prediction of behavior with that structure, specifically biological entities like DNA and RNA. So that's where we move to that next piece that Andy was talking about with the MRI slice and being able to create a model, right? That's a static model, but it's now starting to get to a place once we have that where you can start to see how things are interacting with it or predict that and then test in
simulate. Once you have the static model, then the AI can say, okay, well, how do these things work together? Let's run a simulation that says these neurons work in this way and so on. And then they make that model more and more sophisticated to the point where that representation the brain is actually thinking. Right.
Yes.
So, that it's fascinating. Let me talk a little bit about bioinformatics, which is something that's, really important in the application of computing to biology. 2 points. One is that, it was data scientists who understood that cholera, I think it was being transmitted from a well. And they did that by mapping the incidence of cholera. People who have studied, diseases and science know this story, and I don't know it well. But the idea is that they didn't know what the transmission vectors of cholera were, but it turned out that the people who were getting it were all somehow related to this one well. So that was the sort of the point of origin of the outbreak. And that helped them understand that there was something in the water that was being transmitted by water into other humans, and then from human to human somehow via water. Like what kind of water? Well, that was data science understanding biology and the vector of disease transfer. Well, now fast forward to today, when billions of people have a GPS-capable watch on them, which is running continuous sensor data back to the cloud about what their body is doing on a range of different measures.
Mm-hmm.
And gathering all that information voluntarily gives us a whole new way of understanding what's happening in populations on the health dimensions, ranging from vitality all the way to terminal disease. So there must be people working on this. I have a friend, Chris Lunt, who is the sort of the lead AI proponent and master of the information technology that's being used by the NIH. And they have a program called For All of Us, where you can sign up and volunteer to contribute your data, not the watch data that I was just referring to, but contribute your data, to this collection that's being used to understand disease, in the human population in the United States. So anyway, it's happening out there. That's the bioinformatics leg of digital biology.
Yeah. And I just want to stop for a second and talk about what is possible now, right? So we talk about like new models are coming, GPT-5 or whatever they call it will likely come, right? They're training bigger and better and more advanced models. But what we're talking about are things that are possible now, right? The other thing that we say is that even if AI development stopped today with today's capabilities, it would still be transformative because of how fast it is, how vast it is in terms of its ability to have giant amounts of information. And so the Colors Health story from OpenAI has been going on since 2023, apparently, but they just published a blog post about it yesterday. It's using GPT-4o. I tried to see whether it was fine-tuned. There's no information about it being fine-tuned. But it is designed to help doctors and patients identify personalized cancer screening. And so it's a co-pilot, so maybe it's a custom GPT using 4o. Identify personalized cancer screening and treatment plans. And the reason that is possible is because 4o is a multimodal model, right? So it can analyze images. It can analyze data in a variety of forms, right? And that stuff is super exciting. Like, that's why this is starting to Andy's like, we may literally have the thing on our bodies or in our pockets that can change stuff. I remember during the pandemic, I don't know what the app was, but you could give it access to your location, and it would tell you if there were reported cases in your area. I lived,
or that you'd actually been in proximity to somebody who later,
right,
was positive.
And that was, I suspect there was some AI involved in that, but that was pre-GPT-4, Chat GPT, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I find this stuff fascinating. Okay, so yeah, Jyunmi.
Well, I was just gonna say, while we're all excited and hearing about AlphaFold 3 release and the potential for drug treatment development and disease treatment development and things like that, again, with all AI, we do have to take a balanced look, right?
Yeah.
So as powerful as AlphaFold 3 is and how wonderful and potentially wonderful that it is, it's still not open source. So it's being used by the grace of big tech, right? And so what would be nice is to see that released in open source, or at least equivalents or other similarly developed models, because there's a lot of checks and balances in here. This is basically how we keep ethical guidelines on point is to have peer review and audit and all those kinds of things. And that's what open source provides. So thank you, Google, for developing it, for sure, but it shouldn't be the only thing and the only thing that everyone relies on to further scientific development and further digital biology and things like that. So I want to hear more stories of just as we talk about frontier models like GPT-4o and Gemini and all these other ones that are out there. That's what the LIMS is, and that's what Hugging Face and all of those platforms are for, is to compare, contrast, analyze, audit, and just keep everyone moving forward. I'm so glad Mistral's out there, as a competing frontier model. So I would say that was probably the next thing to just keep in mind is, as exciting as the information is, let's put a little bit of weight on the other side of the scale and make sure that we take the steps necessary to keep this as open and available to all scientists as possible.
Right. So this is also the intersection of several industries that operate in kind of different ways, right? So traditional scientific research has been done in universities, and that's often available publicly, right? That's part of that. Drug research has often been done as part of a pharmaceutical company. So those are patented or private, right? So it benefits from the university research, but then that's not an open model, right? They're very proprietary, and there's the amount of time that a drug can exist before you have to reveal your recipe so that it can then be a generic equivalent, that kind of stuff. And so now we're in this place where we're pulling from both sides of that, right? And tech is doing a very parallel forward thing. And the difference, I think, between tech and pharma is that there hasn't been interest or a reason for there to be an open source pharma, because that's really expensive. Maybe with AI there will be, right? Maybe there are some parallel tracks that can happen in the way that with AI, parallel tracks between open source and private frontier model are actually in development. Open source is a little behind, but this is just a quote from Othman Laraki, who's the CEO of Color Health. Again, that co-pilot partnership with OpenAI. We view the AI revolution we are currently living through as being the single biggest opportunity to deliver on the idea that technology can improve access and immediacy to critical health information and services. And I think that's like a big part of what we're moving forward with. Jensen Huang talking about being able to move from the science of biology to the engineering initiatives, the engineering tasks of digital biology. And the science is observation and prediction. Engineering is actually building and controlling function, or at least being able to predict function, right? Once it becomes an engineering problem, that gives us a little bit more efficacy and agency in that context. Andy, does that ring true for you?
It does. I while you were saying all that, I was thinking it's so recently that the system of medicine that we have here in the United States provided electronic health records, so that your own personal health record is accessible to any new doctor that there's still permissions required and so on, but there is now the possibility for me to look back about 10 years, I would say, by signing into a couple of different platforms for the medical providers in my community that I am attached to, and look at all of the tests and all of the history of visits that I've had, which is pretty rare because I've been fortunately very healthy, but that was compute 1.0. Now we're talking about applying compute to the advancement of our health in ways that, don't involve, sort of acute care as a result of injury and or imminent possible disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andy, maybe that's your takeaway. Jyunmi, do you have a takeaway? What's your?
I like I said earlier, I'm excited to see these possibilities work out. I like the idea of us collectively contributing to being able to find cures and not just treatments. I hope in the next 10 years we can see the elimination of diseases that like we've seen in the past, and possibly even cancer and Alzheimer's and those kinds of really troubling diseases out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do hope that there is some agreement across nations, across governments, across corporations that leads to some sharing of good for the communal health of the planet, the things that are alive on it, including the people, something like that. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really exciting show. A couple of things to tell you before we roll out. Tomorrow is our news show. Tomorrow, Wednesday, June 19th is our news. There's been a ton of news. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. Yes. So if you're in the U.S., I hope you have the day off. Thursday, we are talking about situational awareness, which is a series of posts comprising a paper that Leopold Aschenbrenner, I think I said that right, has published online. And there's a lot in it. He was an OpenAI person. He's had an opportunity to observe what's happening. And so he's sharing his perspective. It's really important. So I hope you join us for that. And Friday will be our Circle Back show where we'll take a look at the last 2 weeks and share what's happened since then, what we've been thinking about since. We have a newsletter at thedailyAIshow.com, and we'd love it if you subscribe to that, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all the things. Come back tomorrow and have a good Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.
Aloha.